I think now should be okay.
All right, we're live now. Prof. Imtiyaz, you can begin.
Okay. Okay. You can see Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome everyone from different parts of the world who are joining us tonight or today morning for this very important meeting, which is a virtual memorial in honor of Professor Mahmoud Ayoub, who passed away on 31st of October 2021. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Verily we belong to Allah and verily to Him we return. Quran, Surah 2, verse 56. The virtual memorial today is a time to share the grief and also celebrate the world-class lifelong scholarly achievements of Professor Mahmoud Ayoub in the fields of Islamic studies and interfaith relations. We have 9 speakers today, and we're also live on YouTube. So to begin with the program, I will first call upon, we'll have a Quran recitation by Imam who serves as a medical education, medical medicine, New Jersey. Jawad is the graduate brother.
That's my invitation to begin. Okay. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Assalamu alaikum. A brief note prior to my recitation, if you may indulge me, the recitation of the Quran. As Dr. Mahmoud Ayoub himself regularly taught, the recitation of the Quran is a major part of the fabric of the Islamic tradition. I will inshallah recite it in a moment, in part because of this, but my heart also remembers the many times over the course of the last decade of his life when my dear and beloved mentor, the late Dr. Mahmoud Ayoub, and I would recite the Quran together. We particularly felt the connection to Surah Ad-Duha, as many perhaps do for its spiritual and emotional profundity. But it was also this particular surah that he recited back to me, even through the latter stages of his Parkinson's disease, when I last visited him in Montreal this past September. I will now recite Al-Fatiha for Dr. Ayoub, and feel free to recite it as well should you be so inclined, followed by Surah Ad-Duha and a few other verses. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فأوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. May God have mercy on the soul of Dr. Mahmoud Ayoub. May he rest in peace. May his family, friends, loved ones be comforted by his beloved memory. As long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. Thank you very much. May God be with you.
Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Jazakallah khair, Brother Jawad. For our viewers today, I'll go and describe briefly the biography of Professor Mahmoud Ayoub. I will begin my description of his biography with a poem by Faiz Ahmad Faiz in Urdu, who was a Pakistani poet. He wrote this poem in the honor of Muhammad Iqbal, and it builds the personality of Prof. Will render it. May a question case
I think we're losing Professor Imtiyaz, and his audio is breaking up from time to time. So maybe Professor Imtiyaz, if you can try and fix it. It's breaking up. We're not hearing you really. I would maybe if you could maybe restart and rejoin with your computer or with your phone. And in the meantime, so that we are not waiting here on the on this connection, we can inshallah begin. If you don't mind, I'll take over for a couple of minutes just so that that Prof. Imtiyaz can fix this issue, and so that we are not waiting here till that is done. Once again, assalamu alaikum, everybody. And everybody else who is watching us. Currently, we have 28 viewers from all around the world, in addition to us here on Zoom, and people are joining more and more, I can see on my screen. So I would like to begin by calling on Dr. Yaqub Mirza, who is the president of the Center for Islam in the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University. And he's going to say a few words on his behalf, as well as behalf of the chairman of the CICW, Dr. Etin Anwar Ibrahim, who really wanted to be with us today, but couldn't join us. But I understand he had sent a message, which Dr. Yaqub is going to deliver to us. So Dr. Yaqub, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. First, my condolences to the family and my special thanks to all the participants, the speakers, and the guests who are listening. I was chatting a little before. For more than a decade, we have talked about intellectual deficit. My friend Abubaker and Ermin, they know very well. And while we are taking time to address this issue, meanwhile, we are losing many more intellectuals. I'm reminded of our very dear brother, Dr. Jamal Bazenji, passed away 6 years ago. Taha Jabir Al-Alwani passed away 5 years ago. Abdulhamid Abu Sulaiman just passed away about 6 weeks ago. And now we are attending the memorial of our very dear brother, Mahmoud Ayoub, who was a great visionary, a great scholar, and we certainly are going to miss him. I very strongly believe that any work which we are doing, we need to have successors. And success is not a success without a successor. So really, this is, I know it's a hard time to remember, but I really feel that we are all teachers, educators, decision makers, and we need to focus on creating successors. Brother Ibrahim very much wanted to join us. I suggested to him that he can record his speech, but he said no, he wants to be live and be able to interact with all of you. But unfortunately, there's election tomorrow. He is forced to participate in it. So he sent a letter saying that, dear Dr. Yaqub, my sincere apologies to you, Ermin, and the colleagues in Center of Islam in the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University. Due to conflicting schedules, I will not be able to attend the memorial slated for this Friday. As you would probably know, we were forced to face a state election here due to an ongoing power struggle between the ruling clique. And with the prohibition of conventional campaigning by the government, I had to be there almost every day until midnight to greet the people and explain the situation. It is tough, but we always remain optimistic. Professor Mahmoud Ayoub was very dear to me and the family. He literally cried when he heard of my indictment. In one of our darkest moments, he showed a lot of concern. His theological interpretation of Islam, especially in fostering a relationship that is based on understanding between Muslims and adherents of other faiths, is essentially what is needed at time when human beings are being driven into religious bigotry and intolerance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul and grant him Jannatul Firdaus. Please send my regards to my brothers and sisters. I pray that the event runs smoothly and offer you all a profound thanks for delivering a memorial befit of the lasting impact Professor Mahmoud has had on all of us. Sincerely, Anwar Ibrahim, Chairman of the Board of Trustees. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yaqub, for delivering these meaningful words. Greetings from our chairman, Dr. Ibrahim. Professor Imtiyaz, have you joined us again? Professor Imtiyaz, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
So, we cannot hear you, Prof. Imtiyaz.
Can you hear me?
Well, it's breaking up. Can you try?
I'm trying to. Can you hear me now? Can you see?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Go ahead, Prof. Imtiyaz.
I'll stop and come back, and yeah, still problems. We are living in the age of pandemics. So let me thank Brother Yaqub for reading the letter from Brother Anwar Ibrahim. I will read briefly the biography of Professor Ayoub. Professor Ayoub was a man with a gentle soul, kind-heartedness, and concern for the well-being of his family and students. He was a friend, a father, and a teacher all at one time. In spite of his blindness and hardships which came with it, he excelled in his scholarship for the study of Islam and comparative religion to its highest standards, which won him a worldwide recognition and has become his legacy, which he has left behind for us. His scholarship featured depth of knowledge about the subjects he studied and researched, be it Quran, Christian theology, or study of world religions. It was integrated, rational, and pluralistic. An excellent combination of all that makes him into a great scholar. Professor Mahmoud Ayoub was born in South Lebanon in a devout Muslim family, and his upbringing was socially integrated with events and people of Islamic and Christian religious faiths. Professor Ayoub attended British Presbyterian Missionary School for the Blind as a child. He described his experience in the school as nothing but authorities trying to really prove that there was no real educational program for us, but they wanted to make us Christian. And of course they did, he said. And that created a lot of tension between him and his family, especially with his father. He later joined on an American Southern Baptist church and was a zealous preacher, preaching others with the gospel back to Islam. Professor Ayoub received his bachelor's degree in philosophy from American University of Beirut in 1964, master's degree in religious thought from University of Pennsylvania in 1966, and PhD of history of religion from Harvard University. From 1988, he was professor and director of Islamic Studies program at the Department of Religion at Temple University, and also an adjunct professor at Duncan MacDonald Center at Hartford Seminary. After his retirement in 1988, he joined the faculty of the Hartford Seminary and helped launch the MA level program in Muslim Christian Studies and Comparative Religion, also in other universities. After his retirement from Temple University, he became the faculty associate of Shiite Islam and Christian-Muslim relations and co-director at the Duncan MacDonald Center for Study of Islam at Hartford Seminary. In 2016, Professor Ayoub was mentioned as being the driving force behind establishing the chair and raising money for the first academy in North America dedicated to Shi'i studies of what is known as today at Hartford for Religion and Peace. Academic career. Professor Ayoub received several awards and recognitions. For example, he received the Kent Doctoral Fellowship and Canada Council Fellowship in 1994 in Fulbright Exchange, Malaysia. And he also undertook research project on Christian-Muslim relations in Egypt and Lebanon. He wrote several books, and some of his important works, his masterpiece is titled Redemptive Suffering in Islam. The Quran and its interpreters in 2 volumes, The Crisis of Muslim History, and a 2-volume Arabic work, Dirasat fil Alaqat al-Masiyya al-Islamiyya. Professor Mahmoud Ayoub was an authority in the comparative study of Islam and Muslim-Christian relations. For him, the heart of Islam is its moral system based on the principle of love, which is mentioned in the Hadith as no one of you, Prophet Muhammad saying, no one of you will be a true believer until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. With this brief biography, now let me go on to call upon our speakers for this evening. First, I call upon Mr. Firas Ayoub, the son of Professor Mahmoud Ayoub. Firas was born in Toronto and grew up in the United States. He works for Municipal Ombudsman as a lawyer and investigator. He has completed degrees at Brown, McGill, and Tufts University and has traveled with his father to 25 countries. Brother Firas, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Brother Imtiyaz, for organizing this a beautiful memorial, and thank you to everyone who's participating and watching on YouTube. I'm here representing the Ayoub family, my stepmother Dasmalina Ayoub, my sister Sumaya Ayoub, my mother Dr. Linda Clark, and others who are watching. My father and I had a very special relationship, and I just wanted to read some brief thoughts about him before the program moves on. Inna lillahi wa inna lillahi raja'un. We surely belong to God, and to him we shall return. As the famous Persian poet Rumi once said, I learned that every mortal will taste death, but only some will taste life. My father lived and tasted many different lives. As a professional musician, as a world-renowned academic and interfaith leader, as a Christian, as a Muslim, and countless other lives. He is my shining example of brilliance, charisma, tenacity, and imagination. I'm sorry to interrupt. If someone is not on mute, can I ask them to please mute themselves? Thank you. I'm just getting a lot of feedback. He is my shining example of brilliance, charisma, tenacity, and imagination. His being blind never stopped him from achieving all he set his mind to. Born in 1935 to a peasant family in southern Lebanon, it was these qualities that took him to Harvard and beyond, all over the world, to meet with presidents, popes, and politicians, to spread his message of interfaith dialogue and coexistence. Throughout his life, my father never forgot his roots or the kindness that others showed him. When students and friends needed support, or his 7 brothers and sisters and their families needed to emigrate to escape the Lebanese civil war, he always stepped in and did what was right. Despite the discrimination he experienced because of his disability, he believed in the goodness of humanity and surrounded himself with those who also did. Though he had many accomplishments, I think he would most want to be remembered for his kindness, humanity, and empathy. As my father, he always put me and my sister first. He gave us the best education he could and supported us through his tenderness and love. He was our Baba, the best Baba in the world. In his final years, we would take long walks together by the St. Lawrence River here in Montreal, and I got to know him even more deeply. We developed another relationship as best friends. If I am able to carry my father's qualities and legacy with me, then I, like him, will also have tasted life. And I'm just closing now with another poem by Rumi. I want to hold you close like the lute, so we can cry out with loving. Your body is away from me, but there is a window open from my heart to yours. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if Brother Imtiyaz, his internet connection is working, but again, thank you to everyone for attending and for this memorial and remembering, my father in a way that he would like to be remembered and honored. So this is a very special day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Firas, for these beautiful words and for a very loving memory of your father. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him the best place, inshallah, in the hereafter, and to rejoin you with him and all of your family. We have lost Dr. Imtiyaz again, it seems, so I'm going to again step in. Imtiyaz, are you with us? So I think our next speaker was supposed to be Professor John Esposito, if I'm not mistaken, but he is not with us today. Imtiyaz, are you able to join us again? He does seem to have issue with the connection, so we're going to, inshallah, continue. I'm going to call on to Dr. Heidi Hadsell to speak. She was a colleague of Professor Mahmoud at Harvard Seminary, where she was president, and she was a close friend and a colleague. So Heidi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ermin. I'm very happy to be able to join you and to join all of these erudite scholars and religious leaders that have been gathered here to honor and remember our friend Mahmoud. Since we have so many erudite scholars and religious leaders, I thought I would briefly remember Mahmoud as the person he was at Hartford Seminary. So a simple remembrance of Mahmoud at Hartford Seminary. When I first met Mahmoud for a substantive conversation, it was on an early evening in winter around 2007 at a very simple Mid-Eastern hole-in-the-wall cafe in downtown Hartford. He had come with Hartford Seminary McDonald Center professor and co-editor of the Muslim World, Dr. Ibrahim Abu Rabi, he of blessed memory, to discuss the possibility of Mahmoud coming to join the Hartford Seminary for a few years when he finished at Temple. We didn't know at that moment if we would manage to make this dream a reality, but we did manage it indeed, with some help from very special people and institutions. And what we thought would probably be for a few short years turned out to be the better part of a decade. As we talked that night, I knew that I surely would do everything I could to get Mahmoud to Hartford. I had heard him speak and met him briefly several times. I had read things he had written, and of course I knew he was a highly respected Shia scholar and a cherished presence in the Muslim community in the United States and beyond. I also knew his would be an important presence and voice at Hartford Seminary. I had no idea, however, that night, as we talked over our simple meal, what the full impact his presence would have over the years he spent at Hartford Seminary. Mahmoud's presence at Hartford Seminary, his leadership and his vision, very importantly expanded and deepened the long-standing and firm commitment of the seminary to the study of Islam and Muslim-Christian relations. His presence, his knowledge base, his commitment meant Shia thought and practices would become an ongoing, indispensable part of the study of Islam at Hartford Seminary. Indeed, spearheaded by Mahmoud a few years after he came to the seminary, and due also to the efforts of many, some of whom are gathered here today, who coalesced around his vision, we were able to establish the Imam Ali Chair for Shia Studies and Dialogue among Islamic schools of thought, thus ensuring the ongoing presence of Shia studies at Hart Sim and the dialogue within Islam as well as between Islam and Christianity. Mahmoud was warmly welcomed by Muslim and Christian colleagues at the McDonald Center and by other faculty who were not directly a part of the McDonald Center. Many Hartford students, especially those at the McDonald Center, had of course heard of Mahmoud and knew of his work, and they were simply thrilled to be able to study with him, and also very crucially, to have access to him as a human being. I think how I would best describe the way Mahmoud was received by students and faculty alike, and by the wider Muslim and Christian community, is with the word gift. His presence at Hartford Seminary was really, from the first moment to the last, a precious gift to the whole community. Mahmoud, as we all know, was a brilliant bridge builder. His perspective was one shaped by his multilingual, multicultural, multinational experiences and his deep study of Islam, but also of Christianity and other religions as well. Mahmoud was comfortable with difference. He was comfortable with critical thought and adept at building bridges between difference. He built bridges between Sunni and Shia, between Christianity and Islam, between East and West, between young and old, between those with great economic resources and those with very little. Between those also who could see with their eyes and those like himself who could see too, profoundly and with great insight, using their own skills of attention and perception. I like to remember Mahmoud responding to students in the classes he taught. He listened so carefully. His responses were so skillfully crafted, delivered so gently and yet so firmly too. And he, This erudite, accomplished, well-known scholar corrected his students when he needed to, so respectfully that students would learn what he wanted them to learn, but no student ever felt belittled or embarrassed. There are decades of students of Mahmoud scattered in the world, and I would venture to say that a high percentage of them would describe Mahmoud as in some way a highly significant mentor. Mahmoud, who he was as a person, and the knowledge he shared with his students and what he expected of them had a huge impact on them. Their encounters with him left them changed human beings. In the years he was at Hartford Seminary, Mahmoud had little patience for long faculty meetings and formal office hours. If you wanted to see Mahmoud, you usually went to him. This meant going to the house on campus where he and Lena lived. And often when one got there, one would find others there as well. Students, faculty, people from the community, visits from people far away. There was joy and warmth and deep and engaging discussion. It was all part of the process in which Mahmoud helped form and shape students, as well as his peers, as human beings, believers, intellectuals with open minds and hearts. So Mahmoud was a bridge builder and he was a mentor. And there's one other characteristic that I want to briefly remember today. Mahmoud was a problem solver, as perhaps only a deep thinker, a bridge builder, and a faithful believer can be. How many times over the years that Mahmoud was at the seminary did I find myself leaving my office and crossing the grass to go knock on the door at Mahmoud and Lena's house, carrying with me worries over a problem to be solved in the school I led, or a concern about a student, or a question to be considered that I really hoped Mahmoud would consider with me. And then there were also the times I would get a call from Mahmoud and an invitation for tea, and I would know that this time it was Mahmoud who had a concern he wanted to discuss, or a plan of some kind that he hoped would come to fruition, or an academic idea he hoped the seminary would pursue, or a dilemma he was seeking to solve. And then I too, like the students, would feel when I left that somehow my perception of whatever it was we had discussed had been deepened, widened, and enhanced. I cherish the memories of our conversations, the problems he helped me solve, and the hopes and dreams and sometimes fears we shared over the cups of tea and the yummy products of Lena's culinary skills. I miss my friend and colleague Mahmoud, and I'm ever so grateful for the gift he was to Hartford Seminary, to Muslim-Christian relations in general, and like the rest of you, I'm sure are feeling grateful too for what a gift his friendship was to me.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for this wonderful and fitting tribute to Professor Mahmoud. I know that he was very loved by the community at Hartford Seminary and the wider Hartford community, but also all over the United States and Canada and all over the world, Indonesia and Malaysia, everybody who knew him. I had never met anyone who had said anything but the nicest things about Professor Mahmoud. And when I was at the IIIT, I was in charge of the summer student program, and Professor Mahmoud taught for years with us. And I know that the students are always in awe of his intelligence, of his memory, but most of all, just his daring, his warmth, as you said. And it's so beautiful that you brought this forward. I'm going to take over moderating the session. Professor Imtiyaz is still having issues with the connection. And in order to make sure that this proceeds without any interruptions, I will step in. So I see Professor Imtiyaz has a hand up. Were you going to say something? Or was that just a supportive role? In any case, We're going to then move to our next speaker, and that is going to be Dr. Alwi Shihab, who's joining us from Indonesia, I believe. He is one of the leading authorities and scholars on the interaction of Christian-Muslim communities. Currently, he is the Indonesian President's Special Envoy to the Middle East and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Dr. Alwi, thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead. Dr. Alwi, you may need to unmute your microphone, please. Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Friends, colleagues, scholars who are attending this webinar.
Dr. Alwi, it seems your microphone is muted again. Can you please unmute it? Sorry about that.
1, 2, 3. Is it
yes,
okay?
We can hear you now. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished participants, professors, friends of Professor Ayoub, I think we share the same sorrow. What a great loss to all of us as we learn the passing of our beloved teacher, friend, and great educator. My contact with Professor Ayoub started from the year 91, when I arrived Carbondale, Illinois, with my wife and 2 kids. During one of a cold winter in Carbondale, Illinois, I attended an interreligious discussion on Christian-Muslim relations. To my disappointment, the discussion went so harsh and ended in unpleasant atmosphere. I realized that both parties were so fanatical, and none of them was willing to listen and respect the other party. I was there with all bitterness and went home contemplating about what can I do towards creating the right way of respecting one another. I decided to embark on the field of Muslim-Christian relation. The following day, I called Harvard Seminary office and tried to contact Professor Wadi Haddad, who was one of the Harvard professors there. I came to know that he left Harvard Seminary, and I was advised to talk to the president of Harvard Seminary. I think BBC was the president. I talked to her, and I disclosed my desire to do a research work on Muslim-Christian relations, and need from her to put me in touch with one of Harvard professors to work under him or her. Knowing that I completed my PhD program in Cairo, she offered me an opportunity to teach. But I said, I come to learn more and not to teach. She then referred me to Professor Ayoub, whom she spoke highly about. I talked to Professor Ayoub and told him my story and my desire. With wholeheartedly, he responded positively and showed his willingness to help. I still remember, I spoke with him in Arabic language over the phone and said to me in Arabic, "Ta'al al-yom, ana asa'adak." Come today and I will help you. I will never ever forget that kind words from him. I was so happy and later discussed with my wife and my kids that I will leave for Philadelphia to meet Professor Ayoub. When I met him for the first time, he showed kindness, tenderness, with bright face. After discussing a bit, he said, I will help you, Alwi, to get your aim. He then proposed to me to enroll at the master degree program at Temple University, Department of Religion. At first, I was reluctant to accept the proposal, but I could not resist when he offered me scholarship, as he was the head of scholarship committee. Then he took me to the head of the department, Professor Rains, and told him, I got a bright student here, Alwi. I want him to do masters here. I told Professor Ayoub, I'm not sure if I can succeed. And moreover, my English proficiency is below standard. He said, no, Alwi, no, you can do it. Just try one semester and I bet you will succeed. So I decided to stay and see what will happen. I rented a room in Philly and left my wife and kids in Carbondale. At the semester end, I got not too good grade, but the grade was B and A minus. I then decided to bring my wife and kids to Philadelphia, rented a small house on the city line area. When I completed my master's degree in 2 years, I told Professor Ayoub that this is the time for me to go home. He said, no, I want you to continue to the PhD program. And I promise, he said, that I will give you an opportunity to once in a while teach in my class. I thought to myself, this is a great opportunity for me to enhance my CV when I go back to Indonesia. I decided to go with Professor Ayoub advice, and I continue the program. After 4 years, when I completed my PhD program, I asked his permission again to go home. He opposed and said, you should go for postgraduate program, postdoctorate program, and I will write a strong recommendation for you to Harvard Divinity School. I was so happy with the suggestion, and with Professor Ayoub's recommendation, I was accepted at the postdoctorate program at Harvard Divinity School. I must acknowledge with all my heart that I owe him a lot. He was a great motivator and held my hand to reach my academic destination. From 91 until his death, our close relation grew as time progressed. He was always there beside me whenever I need his advice and guidance. Even when I hold official position as foreign minister and senior minister, Professor Ayoub was always in my heart and mind to seek advice and discuss important issues. I still remember vividly when I was, as Foreign Minister of Indonesia, scheduled to speak at the UN General Assembly. I sent a copy of my speech for correction and review to Professor Ayoub. A journey from 91 till his death, 30 years of wonderful memories to cherish forever. We kept in close contact together. Every time I visit the US, meeting Professor Ayoub is one of my important agenda. In fact, in my last conversation, days before he was hospitalized, I promised to visit him in the coming March. Indeed, because of COVID, my travel has been so limited, even within Indonesia. Professor Ayoub, my beloved teacher, May Allah grant his reward and mercy for every single deed you render to me. May Allah place you with his righteous servant of Allah in his Jannah. You really deserve it, Professor. My deepest sympathy to all the family in Canada, in the US, and Lebanon, especially Lina, Firas, Sumaya, and Linda. Please know, Professor Ayoub, that all your friends and students who are scattered in every corner love you and respect you, and do sincere prayers to Allah for your well-being there in the hereafter. Professor Ayoub, finally, I am indeed proud to be your student and your son, as you always call me, till we meet again in paradise, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Alwi, for these wonderful and touching words. And we know that you are very busy and you really put an effort, took time out of your very busy schedule to join us. And so we really appreciate it. And may Allah grant you ease in this situation. And inshallah, like you said, join you with your beloved teacher in paradise, inshallah, as you have requested so beautifully. Thank you so much once again. We're now going to our next speaker, next guest, which the Dr. Etin Anwar. She is the chair of religious studies at Howard and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York. Dr. Etin, welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Ermin. I'm honored today to spend my morning to be with all of you. Greetings to organizers, distinguished speakers, and especially to Professor Mahmoud Ayoub family, Lina and Firas. Nice to see you again, Firas. I thank Dr. Imtiyaz for inviting me to be part of this event. I am reminded how Professor Ayoub united us in his life and his passing. I would describe my relationship to Professor Ayoub as his mentee. This is quite different from many of you who are colleagues, students, teachers, and all kind of relationship. I met Professor Ayoub when I was a PhD student at Binghamton University in early 2000. Professor Ayoub would come to each conference we held at Binghamton University. I remember looking at him with admiration and awe for his accomplishment and his generosity. His generosity and humility attracted me the most. We visited him a few times in Philadelphia. Lina was generous in hosting us and giving us wonderful food. I think I've heard food before. I remember one of the life-changing conversations we had at that time. I just gave birth to my third child, and I came to visit him and Lina. He said to me, Etin, there are many enjoyment in life. Children are your responsibility. They are your career too, and you have PhD. Essentially, he was saying to me, there are enjoyment beyond children. I was very shocked. I come from Indonesia. Children are highly, highly valued. The first question people would ask when I got married for the first time, and last time probably, do you have children? Is something very common. So I was very, very shocked. But this conversation set the tone in how I want to live my life as a mother, wife, and a scholar. When I came home, I told my husband, we will not have more children. We are done. At that time, I was also taking my time off to take care of my newborn. Professor Ayoub suggested that I maintain my affiliation with Temple University as a fellow so that I could maintain my academic status. I remember meeting Professor Blankinship. I don't know if you remember me, but Professor Ayoub introduced me to you, and I was very grateful for the opportunity to spend 1 year affiliation with Temple University. As you could see that Professor Ayoub connected me to people who would help me along the way with my career. his support didn't end there. I was looking for scholars to interview. Professor Ayoub was, of course, very, very happy to help me again. For me personally, the passing of Professor Ayoub is a loss of a mentor who had been there in time of need and happiness. May Allah grant him with Jannatul Aliyah, and we would send Al-Fatiha for him. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Etin Anwar, thank you so much for these wonderful words and your memories of Professor Mahmoud. I think it's becoming clear as we are listening to everyone here contributing how many lives Professor Mahmoud touched and impacted, and how many people all over the world had been enriched in their life, in their understanding of life by Professor Mahmoud and his beautiful soul. So thank you once again, Dr. Etin Anwar. Our next speaker is Dr. Abubaker Shengieti. He is the Vice President for Islamic Programs at the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy, and formerly he was Executive Director of the International Institute of Islamic Thought, where he also worked closely with Heidi and Professor Mahmoud as well. So welcome, Dr. Abubaker. Dr. Abubaker, you would need to unmute your microphone, please. All
okay.
Right. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you, Brother Ermin, and thank you to all the brothers at the Center of Islam and Contemporary World for organizing this memorial, for the invitation to participate. First, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show Professor Ayoub with his mercy, reward him with paradise with the martyrs. And again, I extend my condolences to the family, to Firas, to Sumaya, to Lina, Linda. I have known Professor Ayoub for 15 to 20 years, particularly the last 15 years of his life. We have been in touch frequently. Actually up to a few weeks before he passed away. And I want to just share parts of that last conversation, which reflects the kind of qualities that many of us here know about Mahmoud. And although in his last year or so, physically and mentally, his strength was diminishing. But he said to me, you know, Abubakar, I long to for seeing you. I would like to see you. And he said he was planning on coming to Washington, D.C. to visit a friend with Lina. And he would come to visit me. And in the same phone conversation, he said to me toward the end, like he always does in his phone conversation, Abubakar, let me know if I could be of any help. And that reflects a fundamental feature of Mahmoud Ayoub, his love and commitment to his friends, and his willingness always to extend a hand to them. I will limit my comments to just two fundamental features of Mahmoud's character. First, he is a man of principle and courage. As a teacher, as a scholar, and as a community leader, he has demonstrated his commitment to principles and commitment to values, and a commitment to the unity of experience, religious experience and thought. He, as a scholar, made a significant contribution to the study of religion and interfaith dialogue. but he also, through his activity as a scholar, has demonstrated a commitment to those values. So in theory and in practice, Mahmoud Ayoub has demonstrated a commitment to a higher level of contribution. And as a community leader who helped build and guide institutions that represent Muslims and others in North America and abroad, he has been committed to these values of social justice and responsibility and accountability to his creator. One time, just to give an example of this commitment to a higher value, he said to me, we're discussing some project of American Muslims visiting Jerusalem. He said to me, Abubaker, I have made a commitment not to visit Al-Aqsa Mosque until it is liberated. And he lived through his life with that commitment. And about his courage, Professor Ayoub would make a stand and publicly express his positive views, even if they are in the minority. And we have seen him, I have seen him firsthand in conferences presenting provocative ideas which are in the minority, but defending them. And at the same time, he would encourage young scholars to defend their ideas, even if they are in the minority. And that is a quality that helped him impact the intellectual evolution of generations of scholars. And as I think Professor Esposito mentioned, in numerous conferences, Mahmoud Ayoub would not shy from presenting provocative ideas and defending them, not for the sake of controversy, but for the sake of enhancing the quality of intellectual debate. I remember one time we were having a conversation about paradise and hellfire and these things. And he said, we used to have a lot of discussions on these matters. He said to me, he believes paradise is a mental state. So I said to him, but the Quran has described paradise in very concrete material terms. So he said, so I said, they do not exist. He said, I did not say that. I said paradise is essentially a mental state. So, you know, these kinds of ideas and the way he presented himself, I learned a lot from him. And I'm sure many of us have stories about his intellectual courage and his unique ability to advance intellectual debate through his ideas. Let me move just quickly to the other unique quality which many of us have talked about, and that is his compassion in his unqualified drive to help others, whether they are students, young scholars, or community members. I have experienced many of those in instances when I was directing IIIT programs for students and scholars. Mahmoud Ayoub was so helpful throughout in not just teaching and participating in the scholars program, but also in recruiting the students, in planning, in designing courses, and not to mention his commitment to the students. When he comes, he will not only teach during class time, which attracted, by the way, more than just the students, the staff and others would always come to his lectures. But beyond class time, the students were always surrounding Mahmoud in the lounge, at the hotel, on the street, walking with him during dinner time when we were invited by Dr. Yaqub or Dr. Jamal. Students and young scholars were always around Mahmoud, listening to him, asking him questions. He was a magnet, socially and intellectually. I would say, in conclusion, that Mahmoud, as a teacher, as a scholar, and as a human being, provided a model for the teacher and the scholar and the community activist who is passionate and compassionate in his delivery and in his performance. Just finally, I would say that Mahmoud always expressed his compassion and his love for others in concrete terms. In my experience with him, particularly during those days when I was with the Harvard Seminary as member of the board, we used to come for these board meetings. Mahmoud and Lina would always come to pick me up at the train station, and they would insist on taking me to their home for a hot meal before they drop me off at the hotel. And this was repeated so many times, and I was so grateful for the many hours we spent together socializing and engaging into very enriching intellectual debates. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him and enter him paradise and shower us all with patience and with peace, and make his legacy continue to live among us forever. Thank you very much again. Wassalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Dr. Abubaker. Thank you so much for this wonderful remembrance of Professor Mahmoud. And I know firsthand when you and I worked together at IIIT, how many times I sat with you, and I think there was rarely a time when I would talk with you that you wouldn't mention Prof. Mahmoud. You know, it was either, oh, I just spoke with Professor Mahmoud and he told me this, or please call Prof. Mahmoud and ask him about this, or can you please get in touch with him and ask him if he would come and teach, or something like that, or I'm going this weekend to see Professor Mahmoud in Hartford. You said that so many times, and what you said here was really beautiful personal memory. And I saw parts of that and your affection that you had for Professor Mahmoud, and it really came out in this presentation. So thank you again for joining us, Dr. Abubaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Khalid Blankinship, after whom we will also hear from Professor Abdulaziz Sachedina. But first, I'm going to introduce Dr. Khalid. Dr. Khalid Blankinship is a historian, specializes in Islamic and Middle Eastern studies. He is currently professor of Islamic studies at the Department of Religion, Temple University, and a former colleague of Professor Mahmoud Ayoub. Dr. Khalid, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ermin. Well, alhamdulillah, it gives me a great pleasure here to speak on behalf of the Department of Religion at Temple University, where Dr. Mahmoud Ayoub served for the period of 1988 to 2008 for 20 years. And I was his colleague for the last 18 of those years, from 1990 to 2008. So this was a very considerable time. And also we remained friends after that. And he and Lina continued to visit Philadelphia after that frequently, and we would gather and meet after that time too. Being the two professors of Islamic studies at Temple Religion, of course, we had a very close relationship. My relationship with him was definitely closer than with any of my other colleagues during this entire period. And even though we worked in different areas, and so a lot of our work was not collaborative, but some of it was. And we went to travel together, for example, to Morocco on 2 occasions. Once when we were trying to secure funding for graduate students, and the other time the Durus al-Hassaniya, or the Hassanian lectures that I attended and spoke at several times. And he attended with me one time also and spoke there. Dr. Ayoub also organized a conference on Shiaism in Philadelphia, and I participated in that with him, and later the book of articles edited by Dr. Linda Clark was published with those articles. So these were collaborations that we indeed had. And I remember Dr. Ayoub, like all of you do, as being a kind, compassionate, gentle, relentlessly anti-violence, anti-conflict. And this was part of his excellence, without any question. And I remember also his dealings with the graduate students. And of course, a couple of you are graduates here today that are speaking also. And he was a great exemplar in that, and supervised many graduate students who have gone on to professorships in various places in the world and have their impact too. So his impact reverberates down through time over all of this period. And I remember in our friendship that we would frequently visit each other's families, each other's houses, and so on. And of the people here today, the one whom I spent the most time with, perhaps overall, was Firas, his son. Even though his son was around, but when we would visit each other, he would be there. During those times, we had many joyous occasions where his ability to play al-oud, the instrument, the lute, most excellently, which Firas referred to when he was saying they would work as a professional musician. Well, indeed, he had that ability. And we would sit there singing these classical Arabic songs together, the compositions of the great Egyptian composer Sayyid Darwish, including Al-Halwadi, which was a favorite of Mahmoud's. And so that would be something that you would sit there and we would be, singing in the evening and like that. And this is a good way to remember him because it was a very happy occasion then. His office was a place of gathering of the students. We would frequently, people would, the students would gather there, I would gather there. We'd meet in his office, not in my office more. He had a slightly bigger office in the corner also, but that was something that I can remember very greatly and very well. And then, of course, I'm greatly indebted to him too, because maybe more than all the rest of you here, even in that he was certainly instrumental in my being hired by Temple University in the first place. And he had the confidence to take a chance on someone who had embraced Islam as his religion in his lifetime, even though he didn't know me before that, and could have thought that, oh, such a person might be some kind of fanatic or something. But anyhow, he took a chance on me. And perhaps also Dr. Imtiyaz had something to do with that at the time. And I am very thankful and grateful for that, because that gave me the opportunity to be a professor at Temple University, where I still am and where I've been for 31 years. So I personally am in his debt too, and gratefully thankful to him for that. And so I mourn his passing along with all of you, and I pray to Allah that Allah may encompass him in all of his mercy in the widest of his paradises, and may always bless him in that. And I could say much more, much more, but I think I will leave it at that because of the time. And thank you all for this opportunity. Wassalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much, Professor Khalid, for this wonderful a memory of Dr. Mahmoud. This is just so beautiful to learn all of these different angles and stories that that he had created in his very rich life with so many different people. And I liked so much that you remembered him singing, and you know, we heard that he was very devoted to music and all of that. And I think that is very important. So once again, thanks so much, Professor Blankinship. Now, before we continue, I just want to acknowledge all of our guests and friends and family who have joined us on YouTube. I'll read a few of those messages. First of all, we have from Professor Mahmoud's wife, Dasmalina Ayoub, whom we affectionately know as Lena. She writes, thank you very much to the Center for Islam in the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University for organizing memory of Al-Marhum, my husband, Professor Mahmoud Mustafa Ayoub, Al-Fatiha, Amin. We also have his daughter Sumaya, who joined us, and she sends salam. And she also says thank you all, and to CICW for organizing this memorial service for my dear father, including Professor Mahmoud's son-in-law, Josh, who also joined us. And he said that the family had actually wrote a synopsis in memory of Professor Mahmoud. So I hope this can be shared with everyone, inshallah, in due time. So with that being said, we're going to go back to a few of the messages a little bit later, but we have two more speakers, Professor Abdulaziz Sachedina and Dr. Karim Crow. So first, I will introduce Professor Abdulaziz Sachedina. He's Professor of Islamic Studies and the chair, the Triple IT chair at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. We are really grateful that you could join us, Professor Abdulaziz, so please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's hard for me to contextualize the great man's history connected with mine, because I met him for the first time in 1966 in Iran. And I became his research assistant in Iran, where he trained me to look for the texts, to read for him and record for him, because it was recording of the text that he would go back to it again and again in order to strengthen his research capacities. But that was one thing. Professionally, I can say and I can claim that he was my mentor, and he taught me how to do research. And this is where it comes to probe me with the second aspect of his contribution. In 1960s, we young Muslims were not interested in Islamic studies. Most of us were going into professional studies, lawyer, physician, anything that would earn us more money, because that's what our parents wanted. Our parents never encouraged us to go and do Islamic studies or religious studies. In fact, there was always this question mark, well, what are you going to do with this degree? What will you do? And I think this is where Mahmoud steps in. And he was at Harvard when I saw him in Iran doing research. So for me, there was this encouragement that you can combine your faith and academic treatment of the subject. This was not known to us. At least I did not know. I was educated in the seminary in Iran, in Iraq, and therefore there was this question that how do you come out of that mentality of advocating a religion? I still remember writing papers for my professors at University of Toronto, trying to convert them. I was actually engaged in, bringing them into Islam. If you teach Islam, why aren't you Muslim? There was something in 1960s, we used to think that what kind of Islam are we going to study in the academia? Yes, we did know Middle Eastern studies. We did know different lobbies working in the Middle Eastern studies, but we had no idea that we could combine our personal faith and the research techniques that we learn in the modern institutions of higher learning. I still remember that Mahmoud was supporter of mine because I was married, I had a child, and we needed more support. Fellowships in those days were not that much. Canadian fellowship was $200 and I paid $152 for the salary, for the rent. What else would I eat? And this is where Mahmoud steps in. Mahmoud is giving money, giving me work to do for him as a grader, as a research assistant in the University of Toronto. So our relationship started in Iran and continued. And it continued and continued for many, many years until now. Mahmoud was a special friend, a mentor who left me with a lot of things to think about and to write about. He was the one who encouraged me to do my first research in Islamic Messianism because the topic was controversial. And if I had followed historical methodology, I would have run into problems with the community. And I did. The fatwa of Sistani, Mahmoud went and met with Ayatollah Sistani to convince him that Abdulaziz is kosher. He's a good believer. Why are you doing this to him? But of course, Sistani had his own political reasons. So he did not, but Mahmoud tried every moment, he tried something to put me into the mainstream Islamic community. Why don't you come? You have to come. I said, what can I do? I'm not even neither a good academician at the moment, and I'm not even a good believer now because there's a fatwa hanging on me. And how can I be? Said, no, you will still come. This is where we met Dr. Jamal Barzanji, by the way. Jamal Barzanji was actually the main person to get me the position that I am here at the moment at George Mason University. But Mahmoud was the link. Mahmoud was highly appreciated by Jamal Barzanji. Jamal had extreme compassionate attitude towards Mahmoud, and it was exemplary. I would look at Jamal and say, my God, look at the way Jamal is treating Mahmoud so respectfully. And as a scholar, I think Jamal combined both faith and scholarship. As much as Mahmoud combined faith and scholarship, this was a new phenomenon in religious studies. Hartford Seminary was a kind of experiment where your faith was respected, where your academic treatment was respected, and both of these could come together. And how many times he would tell me that you should leave this university and come to Hartford Seminary. I said, but Hartford doesn't know me. No, they don't even know me. They have no idea who I am, And then he arranged for me to come and give a lecture on interfaith relations, on pluralism in Islam. In other words, Mahmoud has touched thousands of lives and thousands of the young people who came to study Islam academically and who maintained the relationship with the faith community. May Allah bless him all the time, and may we always bear the fruits of his endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdulaziz. This was very touching and very, very inspirational, as your talks and speeches and lectures always are. We are really grateful to have you with us today. And I'm also grateful that in addition to remembering your mentor and friend, Professor Mahmoud, that you also mentioned our mentor and friend, Dr. Jamal Berzenji, who obviously was very instrumental in connecting with Hartwood Seminary and IIIT and many other institutions. And I'm glad that you recognized the relationship that the two of them had. They had both left us, but they have left behind so much for us to live with and live for. And we are all grateful for having known them both, alhamdulillah. So thanks again. Our final speaker is Dr. Karim Crow. He's my teacher. We met first time at ISTAC more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and still remember us having tea in Chinese tea shops in Kuala Lumpur with Professor Farid Muhij. So Dr. Karim, it's such a pleasure to have you. Dr. Karim is currently Scholar Coordinator on Islamic Thought and Muslim Modernity at the Council for Research in Values and Philosophy at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Karim. Welcome.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Ermin and Imtiyaz, for affording me this opportunity. Bismihi tabaraka wa ta'ala. رحم الله عبدا قال حقا فأصاب أو صمت فسلم ويخالط الناس ليعلم ويسأل ليفهم قال هو الرسول الأكرم صلى الله عليه وسلم. Professor Mahmoud Ayoub was a rare and remarkable individual, as many of the people here have said in their own way. I first met him in 1976 at the Institute of Islamic Studies in McGill University, Montreal. And I worked for him intensively, retyping his PhD dissertation for publication with the Hague Press in Mouton. Redemptive Suffering, a classic which has stood the test of time and has not been equaled. And I became his close friend, and I treated him, I felt for him the affection one does for an older brother and for a very close uncle or relation. Over the many years that we shared experiences and ideas, I grew to value his warmth, his live concern and love for his friends, his impeccable intellectual attainments, and his guidance, which, although he had the disability of blindness, he saw and had greater insight into humans than many people who have eyesight. So I have an indelible imprint in my own being of his warmth and compassion and high ideals and nobility. فعلا العلم نعم الشرف. And he was truly a learned man in every sense of the word. I would like to just simply highlight some of the lasting contributions we should never lose sight of when we remember Professor Mahmoud. First was his concern for integrating critical scholarship with the live concern for practicing the faith of Islam and for nurturing young Muslim scholars in that path, which is not an easy path to have in one's life. To be critical and to have an emotional and spiritual connection to your faith requires constant effort and reassessment and reappropriation. I think that he helped so many individuals achieve a sort of balance interiorly and outwardly in their careers that we will never really know the full extent of his contribution as a human being. Secondly, his concern for dialogue and exchange. Professor Heidi has mentioned this, as I have others, and this is something that we are still way behind as Muslims, believe me. And mediocrity and incompetence is the norm among Muslim academic institutions. We have to be honest and recognize that and work to overcome it. And Mahmoud always held high standards and inculcated high academic achievement among his mentees, if you will. So not just with Christian Muslim, Jewish Muslim, Buddhist Muslim, but also intra-Muslim, very important. And again, a blight on the global Muslim presence. The proxy wars and hatred and fanatic intolerance, which is killing people every day in many countries across Asia, is something that Muslims have been blind to for centuries, and which Mahmoud, among others, tried to shine a light on and contribute. And this is something that we should take up as part of his legacy. Secondly, he also did a great service in establishing academic institutions and forums to forward and further and deepen Islamic intellectual engagement with modernity. We know that his work at Hartford is a lasting monument, as was his work in Temple. But we also don't want to overlook, for example, his engagement in Lebanon, his homeland, at the Belmont University in the north part of Lebanon, which is a Christian institution, Antiochian Orthodox Church University, in which he helped foster a Christian Muslim presence there. And I also want to mention his contribution in Indonesia and Malaysia, very important. He was one of the prime movers for the establishment of the MA Comparative Religion at Gajah Mada University in Yogyakarta in Java Island, and has had a very profound impact on many Indonesian scholars today and in Malaysia as well. I have so many fond memories of Professor Mahmoud eating kebab in a tea house in Tehran, having a water pipe in a restaurant in Malaysia, having so many warm and fruitful exchanges around his table in his home, whether in Philadelphia or Hartford or Montreal. These are indelible imprints that are part of my being, and I thank God that I was able to be enriched by his presence and his being. O companion of every stranger, be the companion of his strangeness in the grave. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karim, for this wonderful, moving presentation. I would like to thank you all for speaking here today. And I want also once again to recognize everybody who is following us and leaving comments on YouTube. And I want to acknowledge them by reading their comments. And I think this is very important as a part of a tribute and memorial to our beloved teacher, Professor Mahmoud Ayoub. I already read a few messages from the family. I'm going to read a few more messages that have arrived on YouTube. We have Mali Nakia saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, al-Fatiha from al-Marhum Professor Mahmoud Mustafa Ayoub. We have Professor Sadia Sheikh. She's sending her salams. She said, sending condolences, loving dua to the family and all the students of Professor Ayoub. May his legacy as a stellar human being and a great intellectual continue to nourish all of us. We also have Professor Abdul Qadir Tayyib, who is sending his salams and condolences to the family. He said, may Allah accept Professor Ayoub in his infinite mercy and shower his legacy with wisdom and barakah. Abdul Qadir Tayyib, former student at Temple. Novin Dostar sending his condolences to the family. Zain Qassam is sending deepest condolences to the family. He's said, may Professor Ayoub's soul be returned to the sublime presence. I have fond memories of scribing for him years ago at McGill when Linda was expecting Firas. Ali Shakibai says, Viva dear Professor Hadsell, you said it all in such an eloquent way. Indeed, he was a precious gift. Thank you so much. This was in reference to Heidi's remarks. We have Sadia also reflected on Heidi's remarks, saying, Heidi, your words are so resonant. As his student, I was inspired by his sharp, incisive intellect that was always accompanied by a gentle and caring mode of engagement with all his students. Sumaya Ayoub thanked Dr. Shihab Alwi for his beautiful words. Shigeru Kamada said, my deep condolences to Professor Ayoub's family from the Far East. I have happy memories of his tafsir class in Montreal many years ago and of his insightful talks in Tokyo. So I'm assuming this is coming from Japan. Ali Shakba, we have many more. Dear Brother Alwi, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullah, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Lucy Bregman said, this is a beautiful memorial for a beloved colleague. Thank you for organizing this event. Professor Omid Safi says, may God have mercy on Ustaz's soul, bless him, illuminate him, and admit him to God's own presence. Thank you, friends, for remembering Mahmoud in such a loving way. Adnan Mukrani said, blessings, light, and mercy on his soul. Sadia also reflected on something that Dr. Karim said, rare and remarkable, describes Professor Ayoub so aptly. We also have IIIT East Asia, I believe joining from Malaysia, saying that Professor Mahmoud used to teach at Georgetown, and I always drove him a whole day. Driving Professor Mahmoud for a full semester was such a memorable experience. Greetings to all from Shahran in Kuala Lumpur. Barbara von Schlegel said, may God gather Sidi Mahmoud into his love. And Rihab Ayoub saying, thank you CICW for this memorial service event for my beloved uncle. He was an amazing person with a huge heart, wanting to help everyone and only expected recognition from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the remarks that we got from people. As you can see, very diverse group of guests and friends from all over the world, literally. And I thank you all for joining us, for being with us, for sharing your love for Professor Mahmoud Ayoub, sharing your memories with us, especially our speakers, and a special recognition and gratitude to Professor Imtiyaz Yusuf, who put all this together, who contacted everybody, created this program. Unfortunately, it looks like his internet connection gave up in the last minute. So I had to take over, and I hope that this impromptu hosting wasn't all too bad, if you will. But I thank all of you, really, from the bottom of my heart. I knew Professor Mahmoud. Thank you.
You did a good job.
Thank you so much, Dr. Imtiyaz. Thank you. I knew Professor Mahmoud maybe not as well as many of you did, but I know that he was a very kind person. He was compassionate. And I remember once, I think we prayed Jummah at IIIT, and I was a khatib. And after I recited, I believe it was Surah Al-Takathur. And as you know, at the beginning of the surah, there is a few repetitions of Kalla Sawfa Ta'lamun and so on. And I might have, I don't really remember that. I might have recited one too many of these verses. You know, there is a repetition. So sometimes you lose, is it 2 or 3 times? And when we were done, he came so lovingly to me and he said, Sinan, and he used to call me Sinan, you know, I'm Sinanovic, but you know, the Arabs often call me just Sinan because I think it's easier for them and it's an Arab name originally. So he would say, Sinan, how many Kalla Sawfa Ta'lamun are there in this surah? And I said, I guess it's 2, but I don't know how many recited. He said, I think you recited 1 extra, but that's fine. So that was his loving way always of approaching. And he always had very kind words to say to me while I was there with Dr. Abubaker at IIIT. And we always counted on Professor Mahmoud to teach. He always taught, and this was Dr. Abubaker's design. He was the one who initiated that summer student program. he always wanted Professor Mahmoud to go first, because he said, Mahmoud is going to give the students this overview that is going to guide them through the rest of the summer student program. And he is the only person who can do that. So I would just recognize Dr. Abubaker and his love for Professor Mahmoud and how much he meant to us as a person and as an intellectual. He really was a rare person to find in that way. So I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I don't think anybody really minds that. And so I'm here also getting a message from Zain, also saying, thank you, Karim, for that moving, wonderful tribute to Abu Firas. And then we have Richard Gauthier, who said, being Dr. Ayoub's neighbor the last 2 years, I had the pleasure to enjoy his presence despite his condition, witnessing the full-time devotion of Lena always by his side, as many of us have witnessed over the years, and such a loving and beautiful couple they are. So as always, so good to see all of you. Heidi is sending her regards to everybody here on Zoom. Those of you watching on YouTube cannot see that, but basically she's thanking everyone. Once again, thank you all. May Allah bless you and reward you. And I was actually initially tasked to read the dua at the end, a prayer. So I'm going to end with that, even though my duties here expanded under the spotlight. So inshallah, we will close with this dua, with this prayer, and we will begin. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu wa'afihi wa'afu anhu wa akrim nuzulahu wa wasi' madkhalahu واغسله بالماء والثلج والبرد ونقه من الخطايا كما نقيت الثوب الأبيض من الدنس وأبدله دار الخير من داره وادخله جنة وعذه من عذاب القبر وعذاب النار. اللهم إن محمود في ذمتك وحبل جوارك فقه من فتنة القبر وعذاب النار وأنت أهل الوفاء والحق فاغفر له وارحمه إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. Oh Allah, forgive your servant and our brother Mahmoud. Have mercy on him. Give him strength and pardon him. Be generous to him and cause his entrance to be wide and wash him with water and snow and hail. Cleanse him as white cloth is cleansed of stains. Give him an abode better than this abode. Take him into paradise and protect him from the punishment of the grave. Ya Allah, surely Mahmoud is under your protection and in the rope of your security, so save him from the trial of the grave and from the punishment of fire. You fulfill promises and grant rights, so forgive him and have mercy on him. Surely you are most forgiving, most merciful. We ask the Almighty Allah to grant mercy to our beloved friend, our teacher, our mentor, our father, our husband, our friend Mahmoud, to send him the best blessings in the hereafter, to put him in the companionship of prophets and the righteous people and martyrs, and to, in his infinite mercy, envelop him in forgiveness and grant him the closeness and the vision and the insight to enjoy divine company as he always longed for and as it was the thing that he most longed for in this world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on him, to join our hearts in love and beauty for him, and to make us always remember the beautiful memory of Professor Mahmoud. Allahumma ameen wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. And we will conclude by reciting once again Surah Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. On behalf of the Center for Islam in the Contemporary World at Shenandoah University, once again, I would like to thank you all for joining us. If Dr. Yaqub, if you have any last words to share with our friends and guests.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate your attendance. May Allah reward you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. And once again, big thanks to Professor Imtiyaz for organizing this. And to all of you, I haven't seen some of you for a while, and we haven't seen each other because of you know, the pandemic in our usual venues. So again, it's so nice to see all of you. Greetings and blessings to all of you. And I hope that we will soon, inshallah, break bread and eat together and see each other very, very soon. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And thank you to our YouTube audience.
Thank you, Ermin.
Salam to Professor Blankinship.
Yes, salam to you, Professor Alwi. It's so wonderful to see you, Dr. Alwi.
Yes.